This is the Saturday Morning Serial Podcast. What is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Saturday Morning Serial. I'm Amanda Ann here with Mike, and today we are reviewing the new Marvel film, Thor Love and Thunder. But before we begin, just a couple announcements. This past week, I apologize. Mike and I got some type of bug. It's not COVID, but we don't know. We've been coughing and sneezing, so good time. So our Stranger Things episode was canceled last week, but we're going to reschedule that for next week, so you don't want to miss out on that. I can't stop thinking about that show, like some parts in that show, so I'm excited to talk about it. So today, like I said, Thor, we saw it last night, and you know, I'm such a big Thor fan. So this movie I was so excited for this. It was my 2022 film, and yeah, it's directed by Taika Waititi, and it stars Chris Hemsworth. He's back as Thor. Tessa Thompson's back as Valkyrie. And then we got Natalie Portman, and she is Jane Foster, and she's also Mighty Thor, which she was amazing, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Jamie Alexander is actually back as Lady Sif, so that was exciting to see. And Russell Crowe was in it, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And Taika Waititi is back as Korg. So in the beginning here, we leave off with Thor from when we last saw him in Endgame, leaving with the Guardians of the Galaxy. And you can see that he's decked out in rock and roll gear courtesy of Star-Lord. So, I mean, that was fun. Overall, though, this movie, like, I was thinking about it today, and I was telling Mike, as a Thor fan, it was really nice to see the characters come back. It was like seeing family again. But as a film, it didn't land for me, and I'm a little disappointed because, and here's why. Yeah, Chris Hemsworth is back, and he's hilarious as Thor, but I felt like it was missing something. Like, Thor is known as someone who's he's innocent, and he thinks he knows what he's talking about, but, you know, like, he calls Rocket Raccoon a rabbit, and he's dead serious, but, like, we all laugh at that, and it's, you know, he doesn't mean it to be funny. You know, that's what I miss. It was almost like they were just trying too hard with the jokes in this film. And the thing about Ragnarok, it was one of a kind. And I feel like Taika was just trying to, like, just redo that a little bit. But I feel like he tried a little too hard to replicate what he did with Ragnarok. I don't know. This film, what do you think, Mike? I'm rambling at this part.
For me, as I was talking to you earlier about, it was interesting to take this character again after everything that happened with Infinity War and Endgame. And it seemed to me like a lot of this movie was out of Taika Waititi's control about, like, what he could put in it. He for sure had to deal with, like, Stormbreaker and the Guardians being in the movie, and then Asgard being on Earth, and just all this stuff happening that maybe he didn't decide that he wanted or whatever, but he kind of rolls with it, and the movie spends a great deal of time just narrating and recapping, like, Thor's adventures already, and it's kind of unnecessary. There's a rule in film and in storytelling in general, and it's show, don't tell. And what that means is you don't want to narrate something when you could show something. So if you were the narrator and you were saying that a child had a rough day at school and that's all that was, that's not good. But if you had a scene showing the child getting bullied, or maybe flunking a test, or losing something at school, or forgetting their lunch, then that would tell you that the child was having a hard time at school. And this movie kind of stumbles in that regard. It's just got so much on its plate, and it really struggles to keep up with, like, everything that's happened since Ragnarok.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like, when this movie was in production, they just kept announcing all these characters, all these actors coming onto the film, and it was to the point we were like, wow, this film is going to be really busy. Like, how are they going to tell this story in a 2-hour period? And yeah, you're right. Like, honestly, the whole film is basically Korg, like, narrating everything that happened. And, it was good to see Thor kind of rebound and just, like, regroup. But again, like, the jokes weren't landing for me like they usually do. But one thing I did find that was very tastefully done was Natalie Portman. She's back as Jane Foster. And they took the comic book where she developed stage 4 cancer, and Mjolnir calls to her, and she becomes the mighty Thor. So, and I know, Mike, you and I were talking about, oh, we hope, like, if they go that route, we hope that it wasn't going to be, like, a joke, per se. So, I have to hand it to Taika that he did cover some pretty heavy content well in this film.
Yeah, I really, as a cancer survivor myself and very close to someone in my life who's also fought and survived cancer so far, like, I really needed to see, like, a bald woman stricken with chemo and illness, like, pick up the hammer and become, like, a god. And unfortunately, Jane, she does look a little sick, but, like, she still has her full head of hair.
Yeah.
Like, when you start chemotherapy, usually they shave your head so that you don't have to just one day randomly shower and have all your hair just thread through your fingers.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I would have liked to see it delve more into that aspect of it, and it would have been great to have, like, a Jane Foster, like, origin story Disney Plus series and then build into this, because that's such a good storyline and such and it could be such a heavy gravitas story, and you could deal with it just on its own, and it's just kind of like in this movie. I mean, there's a couple scenes that establish that Jane is sick, but that's about it. Like, it would make a whole great movie or show just based on what Jane is going through.
Yeah, when the part you're talking about too is, like, she's in the hospital and Darcy actually makes an appearance, Kat Dennings. And yeah, I didn't know she had stage 4 until she said she had stage 4. I'm like, you don't look like you have stage 4. But yeah, again, the show covered a lot of material in a short amount of time, and that is something that I would really have liked to have seen expanded more on, from the point of her and Thor calling it quits and just seeing what she was up to that point. That would have been really good too, because they really quickly dived into the whole thing of Thor loving Jane so much that he tells Mjolnir to protect her if anything were to happen, and Mjolnir does, but it's really quick, and at first you would miss it if you weren't paying attention. So another, like, I would say, grievance we have with this film is Gore the God Butcher. He's the villain of this film, and he's played by Christian Bale, and everyone was so excited for him to come onto this role. And Mike, you were saying that you expected, like, a Thanos level villain.
Like a Thanos or like a Joker, just like this villain that completely steals the scene. Just like every time he's on screen, like, the audience is just on the edge of their seat. What's going to happen next? What's he going to do? There's just like this incomprehensible presence of villainy and evil. Like, that's what I was expecting, because Christian Bale doesn't have to take cash money projects anymore. He's very well off, and he's only acting at this point just to do, like, projects with great directors and to tell great stories, and he doesn't need a cash cow. And for him to sign on for this movie, I was really excited, and I heard a lot of good things about Gore in the comics, and for him to just be kind of like, a Voldemort type villain, who's defeated by teenagers, and they all have an instructor with a beard. But I will tell you this, Gore's dilemma in this movie really spoke to me in the times that we live in now, because if you were to say the gods of the Marvel universe are supposed to protect people. They're supposed to they're supposed to stand up for them and protect them and help nourish them as people. And I feel like that was a huge plug-in for just politicians in general for me. And when this poor dying man was starving and dying of thirst and dehydration and had wandered through the desert, and he came to the feet of a god and he begged them for help, all the god did was like laugh at him and like, I don't care about you, like, you don't matter to me.
Wow.
And later on in the movie, like, you know, Chris Hemsworth goes to all the other gods and is like, hey, I need your help against Gore. And all the other gods are like, that's really not our problem. He's all the way over there. He's just dealing with those low-level people. Those low-level gods, that will never affect us. So Gore's dilemma, to me, actually really had a strong note just in how we have to hold our politicians and people in power accountable for what's happening in the world. And I gotta say, it really hit me.
Wow, that's a really good comparison and point you brought up. I'm a little choked up, I'm not gonna lie. Because you're right.
I mean, just watching the news and how the lives of our children are at stake, and people are just like, well, you know, money, you know, politics, you know, it's the other party's fault. Like, Gore does seem like a radical, but, like, maybe I'm a little empathetic towards him because I'm with him. I want to see people in power take action and take charge and really help out who they're supposed to be ruling over.
Yeah, I felt bad for him. I really did. At the beginning of the movie, I really felt horrible for Gore the whole movie and saw that he's just in pain this whole time and he's acting out. And it's up to Chris and Thor are like the same person, right? But it's up to Thor to stop him, of course. And Mike, you drew a comparison between Jane and Gore, right?
Yeah, they were both at the odds of their end. Like, Gore was a believer in, like, gods, and Jane was a believer in science, and science had failed Jane as she was battling her cancer, so she turned to basically magic, and Gore couldn't find any solace in anything other than revenge, and he found another magical weapon and used it to bring change to his life. So yeah, they're kind of the same.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the ending, like, we'll get to that in a second, but speaking of the other gods.
Well, we gotta talk about the Necro Sword.
Yeah.
I've got some problems with this Necro Sword.
Tell me.
It's just there.
Yeah.
Gore shows up at this like paradise full of the gods, and the gods just like, oh yeah, there's this sword. It's over there. Mm-hmm. And then he starts making fun of Gore and choking Gore to death, and then suddenly the sword chooses Gore, and he's able to kill the god, and he begins his reign upon killing all gods. And it's just like, well, it was just there this whole time, and it was just a convenience that he picked it up. Like, come on, like, get creative with your writing, like.
And unfortunately, that's how I felt like a lot of this writing was a little on the lazy side, because you're trying to cover so much material in this short amount of time. They didn't have time to explain the sword.
I mean, the sword lets you disappear into shadow, and it lets you summon, like, shadow monsters. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's called the Necro Sword. Like, how cool would it have been, like, for Gore to, like, kill a god and then to be able to, like, summon a shadow version of the god to, like, fight Thor? Like, how cool that would have been.
Yeah. So, a couple things that, again, I wish were a little more explored, too, was Lady Sif. Jamie Alexander came back for Lady Sif. They hyped up her return, and I love her. She's one of my, I mean, I love all the Thor films, but I love the Warriors 3 and Lady Sif just as much. And when she was gonna come back, I was ecstatic. Her part was just kind of wasted. Like, she lost an arm in battle, and she just kind of showed up, and then that was it. Like, no explanation to where she was, what she was doing during Ragnarok. Like, I wanted more of that, and I was disappointed. But then we meet some more gods. And like Mike was saying earlier, Thor goes to Mount Olympus is it Mount Olympus?
He goes to this city of just gods. Like, it's not Mount Olympus, but Zeus is there.
Yeah.
But it's not Mount Olympus. It's like Omnitopia.
Yeah, something like that. But it's like a big arena, and all the gods show up. And him, Korg, Valkyrie, and Jane, they, it's funny. They disguise themselves, and they sneak in. And Thor's just like, oh my God, Zeus is my hero, and this and that. And, there's fan service. We get to see Chris Hemsworth naked. And he's got this big Loki tattoo. Rest in peace, Loki. So, as a Loki fan, I really appreciated that. But they wasted so much time on this part, and I felt like it didn't really add to the plot of the movie. The thing was, they needed to get Zeus's thunderbolt.
Which they don't even use effectively throughout the rest of the movie. And
I'm just like, what? I don't know why they needed that so bad. Like, they kind of skimmed over that. Because it's like, they go to these gods for help. They need the gods' help. They never really mention that they need that thunderbolt. Valkyrie just kind of comes out and says, like, and we're going to go snatch that thunderbolt. And I'm like, okay, for what? So a lot of the time, and there was like a lot of unnecessary humor in that part. I thought it was weird. Russell Crowe plays Zeus. I'm not a big Russell Crowe fan. It stems from Les Miserables. I have beef with that, but I just did not like him as Zeus. I just thought his jokes as Zeus were just ew. I don't know. It was just ew. The whole part of that was just ew for me.
Because he was talking about, like, orgies and stuff. Yeah, he was very, very sexual, which Zeus is known to be. I mean,
but
Norse gods like to, like, Loki and a horse and all that stuff. And then the Zeus gods are just known for, like, incest and everything.
It's just, it was Russell Crowe. That's all. But a lot of, I felt like instead of having a part like that in this movie, they could have explored a lot more things. That's the point I'm getting out of this is, too bad we couldn't see. I would have loved to have seen more Jane as Mighty Thor. As much as she's in this movie as Thor, I felt like it wasn't enough. I wanted more. And it was nice to see them kind of have her and Thor have this closure of their relationship. And at the end, it's like, yeah, Thor loses her, but he had that closure. So in a way, it's like, yeah, but we needed more of that. And less of Zeus. Russell Crowe is Zeus, no. And another one was Korg. Now, I love Korg. Korg was one of my favorites from Ragnarok, and I was glad to see him again, but I didn't think it was necessary for him to come along the journey. What do you think?
I really do love Korg, and I just felt Korg really didn't need to come along on this adventure, and he really didn't bring much to the table other than, like, narrating and being, I guess, bringing his type of humor in it, and, like, maybe Taika Waititi could have directed more instead of being on camera this whole movie as well. That would have been nice. And they've already got a guy made of trees on the team for a little bit of the movie, then they got this guy made of rocks, and it's, like, how many CGI guys do you need? Like, tell these human stories, please.
I really thought, this movie was going to have more Guardians in it. Just because it seemed like Thor was, solidified as the Asgardians of the galaxy at the end of Endgame. So, but literally, the Guardians are in this movie for, what? Not even 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, they're in there basically for the opening scene, and then they leave. They leave at the end of the first act, so...
Yeah, because...
And they don't even do anything. We were just talking about how Drax doesn't say anything, really, and how Rocket and Groot don't do much, and, the only focus is on Star-Lord.
Yeah, Star-Lord and Thor... And it's funny because, they still have, Thor is just I grant you my ship, and Star-Lord's that's my ship. So, that humor from Infinity War and Endgame leaked over into this, so that was fun to see. But, yeah, Mantis, her only line was, she, growled, or goats?
She did a goat call or
something. And then, but Nebula too, she was funny. She's, Nebula, and Thor was just like, I won't miss her. One character that came back is Valkyrie, played by Tessa Thompson, and I didn't mind her in Ragnarok. I liked her. She's great. She's a strong female, and she's a good representation of the LGBTQ plus because she is now king of Asgard, looking for her queen. And they do mention that when she was a Valkyrie, she lost her girlfriend. So she's got like lost love, and that's why she's drinking a lot. So that was really nice to see some background of Valkyrie a little bit. Was just she's accomplished now. She's got her throne but she's still Valkyrie. I loved her in this movie. And Mike, you weren't a big fan of Valkyrie from Ragnarok, but you liked her in this one?
I really did not enjoy Valkyrie in Ragnarok just because of I don't know, her outfit really didn't have appeal and the drinking wasn't cool but in Endgame and in this movie she's kind of more down to earth and she's less of a personality and more of a real character and I really liked her. Unfortunately, the whole movie is full of strong female Asgardian women. Sif is in this movie, Valkyrie's in this movie, Jane becomes Thor in this movie. There's a lot of strong female character and not enough strong female character things to do to go around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really liked her outfit when they went to go fight, but I also really liked her Phantom of the Opera shirt. She just showed up to a battle in a Phantom of the Opera shirt with her knife and just, I love that. I was like, yes. Just her sitting in a Broadway show seeing Phantom of the Opera is just so funny to me. So random.
So, Amanda, how did you feel about the Disneyfication of New Asgard in this movie?
And it was like I was telling you, I really miss all the aesthetics and the, you use the word Shakespearean thing of the first Thor movie. I really missed that, and I just felt like this whole movie was just westernized a lot. In the Avengers, one of my favorite lines Thor says to Loki is recompense for your imagined slights. I loved when they were talking like that. I'm weird, but I missed that, and it's just New Asgard was for me it was confusing because it looked like a regular town, and they didn't really say if what happened to the people that already lived there, right? Because Gore came and kidnapped the kids, and when Thor saved the children, he was like, you guys are all Asgardian. And they're like, no, we're not.
Well, I assume that wherever it was, where did they settle? Was it?
It was in Ireland?
Iceland or something?
Yeah, one of the countries with an I.
I assume that it was just an empty place and they could settle there. So.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it was cute. I really like the infinity cones.
I would get an infinity cone.
Oh, yeah.
What was that, 6 scoops of ice cream? That would be pretty cool.
Norway. It's located in Norway.
Norway, okay.
So we're, both off.
Free healthcare.
But yeah, the set was good. I was just watching an interview with Chris and Taika on E! Entertainment, and they were giving us a full set tour of New Asgard. It's pretty big. It was pretty cool. It's just a town, and it was interesting how they made that into a little Asgard with you could see the boats flying off into the sky and that kind of stuff too. Another gag in this movie was there was screaming goats that Thor was gifted. So that was funny. Just randomly you hear the screaming goats. And another thing that was funny too that I got a kick out of was how Thor was talking to Mjolnir oh, I missed you, buddy, and this and that, and his axe Stormbreaker would be floating next to him all jealous and stuff. I thought that was clever. I thought that was pretty funny. So we stayed through the credits, and there's 2 of them. The first credit, Mike, you said that was Hercules that came on?
It was Hercules, the son of Zeus, played by someone from Ted Lasso that I can't remember the name of, but my sister is obsessed with that show, and she's probably very excited to see Ted Lasso. I mean, a Ted Lasso actor in a Thor movie.
Yeah. And then the end, this was fun. So Jane, she passes and she gets,
She materializes in
Valhalla.
in Valhalla.
And then we're met with Idris Elba as Heimdall. So that was a treat to see him. And speaking of Heimdall, he's got a kid. I don't know, like, who, what, where, but this kid randomly is his and has the same, like, powers that he can, like, see, like, Thor can see through the child's eyes. So I thought that was pretty interesting. That was helpful. Obviously, it says Thor will return. And this will be really interesting when he does return. Because after defeating the villain,
I want to say he defeats the villain. He kind of accepts Gore as... well, let me rephrase this. He turns Gore to the side of love, to the side of good. And I really like that because so many movies end with, the villain getting stabbed or falling down a hole or something. And Thor won the moral argument and turned Gore over to his side. And I like that part of this movie. I really thought that this finale, with the different colors at the end of the movie, and going between in and out in black and white, and Thor giving the powers to the Asgardian children, and him casting a spell like Odin did onto his hammer to the children's weapons was really cool. I really did like the last act of this movie a lot. So.
And it's interesting because during like the narration of Jane and Thor's relationship, they were saying how Thor, like, he was looking at kids and like you could tell he wanted to be like a father. So it's really sweet how he motivates these kids to fight. I really enjoyed that part too. And so after, Gore is whatever, he passes too, and Mike, this is where I got confused though, is like, A, where did his daughter come from? Is it because he wanted his daughter first and foremost, and that's what what was Infinity, or not Infinity, but
The Eternity.
Eternity gave him his daughter back, but like took him instead? I was confused during that.
Yeah, I really can't provide an explanation for you either because I was just as confused. I think that Gore had been defeated and he was dying, and that his dying wish was that his daughter would be loved by the universe, and that's why Thor adopted her to watch over her.
Yeah, so Thor adopted Gore's daughter, and he's like her father now. So like that part happened like so fast, and then I was left like, whoa. And then all of a sudden she has his power too? Like, I'm a little unclear on that.
Oh, she's got laser beam eyes or something.
Yeah.
She's a different species than Asgardian.
That's true. And so I'll be really curious to see where this goes. Because are there any comics about, like, Thor having a daughter? I mean, there probably is out there. I'm not well tuned with all the Thor comics. So, I don't know. I'll be curious to see what happens.
I think it's an interesting direction to take Thor. I mean, as far as Avengers with family, we only have Hawkeye and we only have Ant-Man. Not a lot of other Marvel characters have families or even children. So it'll be interesting as well because not only will Thor have to like protect his daughter, but he also has to somehow prepare her to be like possibly another god or another leader of Asgard. So it could be really cool, but who knows what will happen? It could go either way for me.
Well, also too though, like, flipping this into a little bit of perspective, Thor literally lost everything. He lost his mom, his dad, his brother, his friends, his planet. So now and Jane. He lost Jane in this movie. So he's got this little girl to raise. I feel like that could be just his, like, I'm trying to find the word, like,
his reason to live?
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. Yeah,
you bring up a good point about Thor losing everything and just how there's real no like drama to it anymore. Like Thor loses so many things and he just laughs his way through it. It's upsetting.
Yeah.
Like that's why I really miss the more Shakespearean dramatic parts of the first Thor movie. Is how like give me like a 5 minute soliloquy about like Thor losing his family and how he deals with this stuff. Like that would be interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm really manifesting Thor to make an appearance on Loki. Like, my dream would be for Thor and Loki to somehow reunite. It could be like on the Loki show, and then have them come back for another movie. Uncle Loki, like, come on, that's so cute. So I am looking on IMDb right now and looking at the reviews. They're not that good. One says an underwhelming mess, crash of a franchise. What WTF did I just watch?
This is the second time the Thor franchise has crashed.
Yeah, so it's got like 7 out of 10 stars on IMDb and 68% Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, it's decent, but it's a Marvel film. Everyone's going to go see it and have their different points of views about it. But, Mike, he's been a long-standing MCU fan, so you know what you're talking about. And I love Thor. Thor is my favorite superhero, but this movie just disappointed me. So, but it was good to see him again, like I said. So with that, that'll do it for our Thor review. What did you guys think? Please let us know. Like I said, Thor and Loki, they're my favorite, so I can talk about them a lot, so don't be shy. And like I said, too, next week will be our Stranger Things episode and our season finale already, so you don't want to miss that out, and we'll talk to you then.